Warmest greetings to one and all in the very blessed name of our risen Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. It is so blessed to have been able to commemorate His resurrection last week. The Easter worship service must always cause the Christian to not just recall but be stirred in love towards Him who has sacrificed Himself for us, that we may have life, and to be joyful because He is the resurrected living God. His resurrection always gives us courage to face all things in this world because He is living and helping us every moment of the day. So we return to the book of Joshua after taking a break from it. Let us turn to chapter 6 once again. Chapter 6. Now, we should not forget where we are in this book. The children of Israel has just spent 7 days walking round, marching round the walls of Jericho, obeying God faithfully to keep their mouths shut. And only on the 7th day, when Joshua gave the command that they would shout, and it is here at this time where the walls of Jericho, the walls that were so thick, so high, so impenetrable to the eyes and hearts of men, collapsed. And the Bible tells us that the walls fell down flat. If you look at verse 20, the wall fell down flat. That is where we stopped. What happens next? Now, for the wall to fall down flat, it means everything crumbled to the ground, to ground level, all around the people. The title for today is When All Else Around You. When all around you is crumbling, what do you do? How should you respond? So we look at the situation that Rahab and her family were in. Rahab, as you remember, was a harlot. She helped the spies escape, humanly speaking, because she knew, she believed in her heart that this Jehovah, the God of this people, is indeed the living and true God. So if you look at chapter 4, very quickly, please, for the sake of those who may not be familiar with this account. Sorry, chapter 2. I beg your pardon, chapter 2. In verse 9, now Rahab said, I know that the Lord, see, she calls their God the Lord. She acknowledged Jehovah as her Lord. The Lord hath given you the land, and your terror is fallen upon us, and that all inhabitants of the land faint because of you. Verse 10, for we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea for you, when ye came out of Egypt, and when ye did what you did unto the 2 kings of Amorites that were on the other side of Jordan, Sihon and Og, whom ye utterly destroyed. And then in verse 11 is the reflection of Rahab's heart. And as soon as we had heard these things, our hearts did melt, neither did there remain any more courage in any man because of you. For the Lord your God, He is God in heaven above and earth beneath. That is who she recognizes Jehovah to be, the God of heaven and earth. For them to acknowledge that is to say she renounced all their gods in their land. This is the ultimate, almighty, true God. That is why she said, all these others are false. I embrace this God, your God, as my God now. So this is Rahab's faith. She heard, she believed, she embraced, she trusted. What was happening on the other side of the wall, On this side of the wall, on the outside of the wall, the people were marching round. Look at let's turn back to chapter 6. Chapter 6. The walls came down. The people went in verse 21. They utterly destroyed all that was in the city, both men and women, young and old, and ox and sheep and ass, and with the edge of the sword. God's judgment. God used Israel to execute judgment on these people who were very, very wicked. We studied that. Extremely wicked people. God have given them hundreds and hundreds of years to repent, but finally judgment is upon them. Now then, look, while all this were happening, people were being slain. Look at verse 22. But, it begins with but Joshua hath said unto the two men that had spied out the country, go into the harlot's house, and bring out thence the woman and all that she hath, as he sware unto her, in verse 22. Why but? It is to highlight to us that while everyone is being killed, from male, female, old, young, animals, but Joshua say, spare these ones. Bring them out. They escaped the judgment of God. You have to think when Joshua said in verse 22, go into, in verse 22, go into the harlot's house. Now that ought to cause us to stop in our tracks. Go into the harlot's house. But the walls came down. Yet Joshua said, go into the harlot's house. What house? Shouldn't it be flattened? Now, one of the things that many Christians and unbelievers debate about is, how is it possible everything went flat, but yet Rahab's house was intact? It was not like Rahab, they were scattered, and Rahab and her family were scattered, and they had to go look for them. No, the house stood in place. All else around them were crumbling, but Rahab's house was kept intact. What is the lesson that we want to learn today about when all else is crumbling around us? What can we learn? Well, the first thing to learn from here is God's protection. When all else around us seems to be a huge calamity, chaos, crumbling, but we see here the protection of God on those that trust in Him. Now, what protection? This protection specifically is precise protection, not just random protection. All the walls, the Bible says, the wall fell. Everyone killed. But Rahab and the family protected. Very precise. When God intended to bring down the walls, He was very precise in protecting His own. The walls will have bricks interconnected, structures interconnected, but everything will fall. You would think that, oh no, this is a disaster. Would they die? But Joshua just said, go to her house. Get them. The house will be in place. My dear friends, we must know that even though they are in there, even though the bricks are interconnected, their neighbor's house will collapse. Now you think about this. In the home, they had roof. When everything is falling, shaking, the roof could collapse on them. It did not happen. The walls, part of the walls may fall on some of them. None of this happened. Now, in fact, how precise is this protection? Look at verse 22 to 25. Notice one word that is repeated. Not only it is precise, it is very complete. Look at verse 22. Now Joshua said, bring out thence the woman and all that she hath. Means nothing, rather no one in there will be assumed to be hurt or dead. Bring out all of them. Now look at verse 23. When they went in, when the young men there were spies went in and brought out Rahab and her father and her mother and her brethren and all that she had, as if describing the father, the mother, the brethren, not enough, all that she had. Again, the all. And then look at verse 24. And they burned the city with fire and all that was therein. Everything burnt. But yet, in verse 25, again, it emphasizes. And Joshua saved Rahab the harlot alive and her father's household, as if not enough, household already, and all that she had. God's protection is so precise, not a single one in there would perish. Like I said again, many things can happen in the house. Many people were in the house. More than normal, I guess. And in all this shaking and structural collapsing, the high chance of the floor giving way also is very high. I never forget reading about this group of Australians in Perth during the football season. They lived in a condominium. This family lived in a condominium that overlooked the stadium, and they invited lots of friends in to be able to stand and watch the very popular game. Many friends came and all squeezed in the balcony to watch. The balcony gave way and just went collapsing. Lots of people were very badly hurt. There was no shaking of the building. Now, a lot of things can go wrong, but God says all will be protected. Although all will be burned, and all will be fled, but this house, it will stand. Precise protection. In times of COVID-19, this must bring us comfort. While the world around us, not just Australia, not just certain countries, the world, the pandemic is happening. Don't think for a moment that God seems to be out of control and these things are spreading beyond His control. No, it's very precise what will happen, where it will happen, how far it will reach, all in God's precise control. And the believer must have this understanding from this passage, so precise. Don't worry, don't fret. You may think it may happen to me. It may happen to my child. It may happen. Well, if God wants it to happen, it is not because he lost sight. He forgot. God did not forget Rahab. God did not forget the promise that the children of Israel made in His name to them. God is very precise. To realize that things are precise gives us a lot of assurance, security in the midst of chaos, calamities. This must make the Christian be very thankful. We worship this living, resurrected God. The world, as I said on Friday night, has, the world calls it natural laws, but as Christians we know God's creation laws, gravity, scientific laws that governs the working of the universe, the world, things around us. Every second, every moment of the day, every microsecond, the Bible tells us is held together by Jesus Christ. By Him, all things consist. He is the one that holds the atom, molecule together. Doesn't turn into a hydrogen bomb everywhere. He is the one. The great power that is contained within this little molecule, this little atom, is so powerful it can destroy the world. What holds it together? Scientists cannot understand. In fact, they have to find ways to release the power. but it's contained. That is the precision of the working of the living God, the resurrected living God. So my friends, precision protection, remember that. But not only that. Look at verse 22. But Joshua said unto the two men. Joshua gave instructions. Now in the midst of all this excitement, to Joshua, to the people, it is a very exciting moment. 7 days of just marching, waiting. The moment came, and they saw the walls come down. All the 7 days wondering how to overcome these walls. At that moment is, well, to some are chaos, to the enemies are chaos, but to the children of Israel, it is joy, it is excitement, it is a moment that they have been waiting for. But yet, in the midst of this miracle, God will make Joshua remember. Now, sometimes we get very excited over some things, and then we are so excited, we forget things that pertain to ourselves, let alone things that pertain to someone in the enemy's city, some harlot. In society, people will not even think twice about them. But yet, Joshua, the Bible says, now in the midst of all the killing, Joshua had said, in verse 22, he already told them before they went in. Joshua had said. So they remember Joshua have already given this instruction. Go to the harlot's house. Notice that he said, go into the harlot's house. The reminder that this is just a harlot, but Joshua remembered. Sometimes we think, I am nobody, I'm nothing, or I am looked down upon in society because of my background before I was saved. I think, when I need help, when things are going well for others, when there is calamity for me, will people remember the moving of Joshua's heart? At that time, God makes sure that Joshua remembered. Don't worry. Not only is he precise, he moves the heart of the right people to work. Sometimes we worry. We ask for help. She asked for help. And in the midst of COVID-19, everyone is facing problem. Will people remember? Some of you mentioned, well, I applied for my visa, but now everything has gone all right in the country. Will they remember? Are they looking at my applications? I'm so thankful for the sharing of some of the recent cases. In the midst of all this, the person was thinking, oh no, how? Government officers are reducing, people are closing, are working with physical distancing. I think I'll be forgotten. And it's expiring next month or a few weeks' time. And then there is lockdown in my home country. I can't fly in. How? But you shared. In fact, at that time, they looked more intently because of COVID-19. They looked, oh no, there are people stuck. Why would they think like that? Because God is not only precise, God remembers you. Look further. Joshua had said, just simply say, cry, all right, everyone remember. No, he was specific. Joshua said unto the two that had spied out the country. Now, it was very specific to say it was these two that Joshua spoke to. Imagine Rahab. Rahab might think, well, maybe they remember, but do they know me? There are hundreds, thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people in Jericho. And so many people. Can they recognize me? Will they remember me? I'm just a harlot that spent just a few moments with them. God will say, Joshua, remember. Joshua, this too. Very specific. Called out for us to realize. You see how God works for us behind the scene. Whether it's COVID-19, whether it's troubles in life, whether it's calamities, Know that God is not only precise, God is very particular in helping. Who are the ones? Particularly these two. They went in. If it is someone else, they may doubt. Well, you say you are the harlot that helped me. How do I know you are the one? Go away. The place is so wide and it's chaos. Everything is in chaos, disarray. If you send someone, would they know where I live? But these two spies, they came. They were let down by me. They know the location. If it's someone else, would they know? My case. How about my case? You know, as we go through all this, we worry, my case. But take comfort. God is precise. God is particular. I never forget when I applied for my own visas, some important thing in life. It was a difficult to the people that were applying for me. They said, oh, this is a very difficult application because of your age, because of your medical history, because of all these things, because of the situation of the country. You know, it's very difficult. But we will apply anyway. So now, in the midst of all the application, and something needs to be redone. And then the person that were employed to help me with this visa application said this, oh no, you want to make changes? I understand the changes are important and those are good changes, important. But you will go down to the bottom of the queue. How would we feel? In the thousands of applications, is a pin in the haystack. And to restart all over again. Is God a particular God, very precise and particular? Will He be, if it is what His will is? And then we got bad news. They say, yes, I've resubmitted. He went down to the bottom of the queue, but I have bad news for you. They changed the officer that was taking care of your case. The person is changed. So now not only it drops to the bottom and someone has to re-look at all the documents, all your background. It looks very bad. This is going to take a long time. May not get through. At least if it were the other person. But God is very particular. The change was particular. Because of this change, it changed to, later this person told us, actually it changed to a senior officer. Before there was a junior officer. And because it was changed to this particular person has the experience and has the authority to approve it, instead of you going through layers and layers and layers, because of this particular change to this particular person that happened precisely in your case, the pin in the haystack. It got approved in an extremely short time. In fact, when we looked at it, the person read it, I think in less than a few days, the person approved it. So please understand, it may look bad. To Rahab, it looks bad. She don't even know that Joshua would remember. Would they remember? We are all huddled up as a family in this room and everything around us is crumbling. Do they remember me, the harlot? It looks bad when things are crumbling. But God even particularly would send this to, it's a very specific way this verse is constructed, is to highlight these two persons. That they will keep their vows. That they will be able to recognize them. They will know exactly where to go. Because the people are going in verse 21. The people are going in to kill. In verse 21, killing is happening. But Joshua had said, they zoomed in very quickly before they got killed. You see, God is behind the scene, working perfectly, even though in our eyes, the world around us is falling apart. Such a comfort for the believer. Everything flattened. Not their home. Everyone killed. Not a single one in Rahab's house. Now, in fact, you would see in verse 25, and Joshua saved Rahab. And Joshua saved Rahab. Is it Joshua? In narratives, it is a way. The way is described. And then to use the word Joshua would actually make us think even more. Is it really Joshua? Could Joshua have prevented one single brick from falling on the elderly father's head, on the elderly relative's head, or on the little child in the cramped room? Could Joshua have prevented one single piece of furniture from falling in all the rattling and crumbling to hurt and to kill anyone? No. No. It's a way of highlighting Joshua saved Rahab. Joshua's decision, Joshua's remembering all the working of the precise and particular God. In the midst of all this chaos, yet these things happen. What a joy to know this God. We are immortal, my friends. We are immortal. Means we will never die physically at all. If it is not God's will, if it is not God's timing, you imagine yourself in that situation. It is very dire. It is very, very fearful. Any one of you been through an earthquake before? Now, before I forget, this is not an earthquake. This is a miracle. Some say, oh, it's an earthquake. That's all. By chance, earthquake. No, this is the precise working of God. 7 days at that time, God says it will collapse. The working miracle of God. Now, some may have been through earthquake. I remember a friend who had went through an earthquake. And in Japan, and I asked him, how was it? He said, it's very, very frightening. The hotel was shaking. Everything around them, when he looked up, was just falling. He said he thought that was the last day of his life. He was afraid. Very frightening experience. He thought he would die. He did not. Christian friends, if it is not time for us to die, whatever happens, don't fear. Do not fear. In fact, after that, he said, he no longer sleeps in his pajamas when he travels. From that moment on, the rest of his life and all the business trip, he dresses up ready to run out of the hotel room. He has his backpack next to him, passport all there. He said, that experience changed him. You always do that. It's life-changing. So Christians, do not fear. Do not fear when all around you is crumbling. Remember the precise and particular protection of God. He is working. Now, what else must we learn? Because of all this, then the Christian must learn to not take things into our hands. Because of God's precise and particular protection, the Christian must not be tempted when things around us crumble to want to be tempted to take things into our own hands. You think about Rahab and family. You ask yourself, who should be more fearful, more frightened? The children of Israel or Rahab and family? The children of Israel stood outside the walls. Rahab and family were within the walls. For 7 days, they looked out of their window. They had a window, we know. The rope was let down the window, so we know they had a window, at least one. Family in there all looking out, carrying the young ones. Look, the people that told us to stay in and don't come out. The people that Rahab, our harlot daughter, told us are God's people and their God can save us. Look what they're doing. Just marching round, not even saying a single word. Maybe they're frightened. We're just walking around, wondering what to do. Maybe they're confused. Maybe they're just still trying to figure out what to do. They can be looking out and say, this looks pretty bad, Rahab. They don't seem to be soldiers, They seem to be just marchers. That's all. Carrying a box, walking around. Rahab, this doesn't look good. Maybe we should do something ourselves. There are lots of things that can go through their mind. Not one day, not 2 days, but day after day, they wake up hoping that they are here to deliver us. Maybe a bunch of them are going to climb up this window and help each one of us go down. But no, they are still walking day after day. You see, as we go through life, sometimes we go through day after day after day. Keep wondering. And there is a very big temptation to say, I think this is not going to work. It is more fearful, in my opinion at least. And I think you would agree. Would you rather be Rahab and family in that building, or would you rather be outside, far away from the wall, just walking around the wall? See, they were in the midst of this building. And think of it. When the walls crumble all around them. Now imagine in my mind, it could be everything fall and then just this one particular structure standing with their house there. It could be like that. Or it could be, yes, everything fell flat and then their house like a lift, boom, to the ground level. Whatever it is, we know that the house is intact. That is what we know, for sure. Whatever is the case. You think, even before that, how the structure was being built long time ago, how the stones will be connected, how the pillars, supporting pillars will be done, where would Rahab stay? All already planned by God, that when everything falls, boom, this thing is still in place. But when we don't trust in the precision, protection, and the particular protection of God, then we will be tempted to run out of the house, to do the opposite of what God says. You just do this. I will take care of you. You just obey me. I will take care of you. You see, whatever the children of Israel learned, what did they learn? When crossing Jericho, when crossing Jordan River. What did they learn when marching round Jericho walls? They learned faith. What aspect about faith? They learned about patient faith. They had to be patient. They had to be persevering. They had to continue to trust day after day, though it looks silly. Same for Rahab and family. They had to learn that. You may think that I am in a worse situation in COVID-19 than others. I am in a more dangerous situation than others. Rahab can think all that. Her family can think all that. But no, that was exactly where God wanted them to be. In these 7 days, they could look at the rope that was hanging down. Hey, the two spies escaped through this rope, right? This rope is still there because the spies told them, leave that rope there so that we can identify your house. Leave it there. I'm sure Rahab would have told them, oh, this is how they escaped, and this because of this, we are promised safety. Did anyone take things into their hands? Hey, when they're crossing, when they're marching past our house, let's all climb down, all right? Grandpa first, grandma, then daddy, mommy, and then I'll carry the children. They can think of all this. They can take things into their own hands. Same for us when we are going through all this. When they're passing, let's go down and ask them to help us escape. Now, not yet. Not now. Not yet. To the children of Israel, when the walls were crumbling, in their hearts, It would be, yes, fall, right? In their hearts, fall, every part fall, yeah, fall, so that we can go in. So on the outside, they see, and this great is falling. But on Rahab's side and the family, they are inside the wall that are crumbling all around them. To them, it's don't fall, please don't collapse. Don't collapse, because we're going to die if it collapses. But that is how God intended it to be. They didn't know. At least for the children of Israel, they were told, all right, now shout, now he's going to fall. They knew. But to Rahab, they don't have such news in the house. They are cooped up. No WhatsApp, no live stream, no Teams, no WebEx. All they know is we need to stay in here. Why is everything falling? Rahab, what is happening? I thought we were supposed to be safe. You see, sometimes we think we are in the worst situation, worse than others. But you must realize, if God puts you there, if God wants you to be there and He's revealed your will to you, that is where you ought to be. That is what He has allowed in your life, in your family's life, in your child's life. You must know that that is your safest place, my friends. To Rahab in the house, why is everything crumbling around us? Like us today, why is COVID everywhere? Why is COVID spreading beyond our control? Can God precisely protect me and my family and my loved ones? Particularly, why are we in this situation? But God designed that very situation. The walls must crumble so that the people can get in to rescue Rahab and her family. That is the intention, the design. Yes, the bigger design is that it crumble, God's people will go in and execute His will. But at the same time, that crumbling, which may look bad, is exactly what God has designed in the whole scheme of things. So my friends, know that in the scheme of God's plan, it may look very bad to you, but in the scheme of His purposes, it is what He needed to bring into your life, my life, to bring to pass the very thing that will deliver you. Please remember that. Don't panic. They could panic. Look at verse 21. 22. Joshua said, go into the harlot's house. It must be in the harlot's house, nowhere else. They must be found in there. That is the commitment. That is the covenant. That is the promise. Anyone who lives outside, not our problem, not within our promise, because we are told to kill everyone. Only those that stay inside. So he said, verse 22, go into the harlot's house, specific house in there. And what? And bring out. Go in and bring out. No one else, not those outside, is in this house, and bring these ones in this house out. They must stay put. They must not panic and run out. You see, in the midst of the walls crumbling, there is a high likelihood in the hearts of anyone, us. Hey, this is our chance to run. Staying in the house is the opposite to what we should do. You see, just like the children of Israel, they must learn. God says, do this. In their minds, it's the very opposite of what we should do as soldiers. We should fight, not just march around and keep quiet. But God says, this very opposite thing, contrary to what you would normally do, what would others do, I want you to obey me. Same for Rahab and family. Each one of them could feel, hey, look, there's an opening there. The walls are crumbled. We can jump down, get out, and run. Grab the children, run now. But Joshua said, in the house, bring them out of the house. They must be inside it. Oh, my friends, stay put if you know that is God's will for you. It may look bad. Trust. Believe. In fact, you look further. Look at verse 23. And the young men the two spies that we spoke about, that were spies went in. You see, it's a reminder. It's these ones, they know exactly where to go. So wonderful, God's provision, isn't it? They knew where to go. If you send someone else, which house? Where's the rope? Oh no, red rope. That rope looks pink. Is that the one? They went in and brought out. Notice in verse 22 is go in and bring out. What did they find when they went in? In verse 23, they went in and brought out Rahab and her father and her mother and her brethren and all that she had, and brought out all her kindred. Double all. All did not succumb to the temptation to do otherwise. Rahab and family had to learn everything that the children of Israel had to learn about faith. But I think her case was even tougher. We are going through COVID. Yes, it's tougher. But remember, this is our God. That is how He works. Precise, particular. They did not succumb. Their faith paid off. They were on the side of the wall. That was more difficult to exercise faith. It paid off. Remember faith. What was Rahab's faith? We studied. She feared God. And because of that fear of God, she knew this is the living and true God. He is the one I need to fear. I need to believe in Him, trust in Him. Because she feared God. She acted. Now the right fear does not make us immobilized. The right fear of God does not make us do the opposite of what we should do. Her actions, was in accordance. I hope you remember all this. Acronyms will help you remember. Her actions were in accordance. You read all these things here. She did not succumb to panicking, running out. She acted in accordance to the truth. Heard. Everything that she heard about this God, she knew this God could do. She just needed to fear Him and therefore act according to what she has been told, what she have heard about Him. Trust Him. Don't take things into her own hands. She may feel, oh no, I'm the one who brought all these people into my house. We're all going to die. Hurry, the walls are crumbling. Take the opportunity, run, scatter that wall, this wall, you go there, escape, run out of Jericho. No. They all huddled in there. In verses 22 and 23, it's very specific. Every single one of them stayed as where they should stay. In the midst of all this, trust in His precise protection and His particular protection will bring such action. Don't, because of the chaos, you panic and you just do whatever you see seem to be right. Now, I'm very encouraged by testimonies shared as I either speak with people over the phone or text them to ask how they are. Last week in prayer meeting, a young man asked, Pastor, is it all right for me to take certain jobs? And this person is a casual worker and has all his casual work pretty much cancelled because of COVID-19. So this person needs to survive, and ask, Pastor, is it all right to take jobs that necessitates me to work on prayer meeting nights and Friday nights? But yes, I know I will not take jobs that work on Sundays that break the Sabbath, that break the Lord's Day. But what about the other nights? I say, I just preach on Sunday. We are not cults. We do not break the 10 Commandments, prayer meeting and Friday. He said, I want to continue I will listen after that to the messages, continue to learn. I will pray. But is it okay? Now, what it tells me is this, that despite the situation that a Christian is in, very dire, very difficult, much more difficult than any one of us. Many of us still have our job. Thank God for that. Not that we lose our job, we should not thank God. But this person is in particularly difficult. This person is in the crumbling walls around the house with crumbling walls. We are maybe outside, not so fearful. But yet, Christians continue to want to be very, very obedient, very careful in how they live. Not panic and just do anything and do things that would displease God and break His commandment and sin. Still very careful. You see, it means that the thinking of the Christian is, I am in these very dire straits. Things around me are crumbling. But I know that God designed this. I just continue to trust Him even though it looks very difficult. A student was sharing. Say, I'm taking my exam. Pastor, please pray for me this morning. It's a difficult exam. I say, oh, exams, online exams. Yes, it's an online exam. And after that, I pray for the person. After that, I texted the student. I said, how did it go? And say, well, Pastor, I'm afraid to say that I failed by a few marks. Just about a few marks. And I say, well, you've done your best. If you've done your best, you were not lazy, then trust in the Lord. I say, but Pastor, you know this thing that we've been reminded always, that no matter how things are around us, and there is this temptation, this opportunity to do wrong, and good can come. We are reminded that we must, in any condition, not succumb to sinning. You say, what are you talking about? You say, because it's an online exam, it's by trust. I can go open my textbook. And I know my friends, they are collaborating on another software, on answers. I get texts from them. I have to resist the temptation that though everything around me is crumbling, there is this opening. For me, there's this temptation to succumb. I just need to check. I just need to collaborate. Just a few marks, I know I will pass. My friends, we live in times where our faith will be tested more than any time. You keep studying about faith. Before COVID-19, we were studying about the faith that the children of Israel must have, the faith that Rahab has. What for? Because God knows COVID-19 will come, and then our tests of faith now will be greater. The temptation to sin will be greater. And then perfect timing. Now we learn everything around us is crumbling. The test for Rahab's faith, greater than the children of Israel's faith. How would she respond? COVID-19 is a pandemic like never before in recent mankind's history. It's far more far-reaching, faster in spread, cure unknown yet, death rate frightening. But remember that just like God designed that it must be the falling of the wall, the crumbling of things around Rahab and family, just as God designed that, He designed that for a purpose. It is meant to deliver them, meant to bring good for them, meant to save them. COVID-19, as we've studied, nothing happens by chance. All things work together for good. COVID-19 is designed by God to cause all around us to crumble, to grow our acts of faith. You would not be tested to not sin, but to have faith, even though things are very difficult, without COVID-19. You will not be tested in that way. Your faith will not be built up in that way. There are opportunities to grow in our faith like never before. Now you're on your own. Every single member in that family. Look at verse 23. It's very specific. The construction is to draw our attention to Rahab. Rahab. Her father. Her mother. Her brethren. Her kindred. There is a very specific highlighting of individual. It is not just a blanket. It's to draw our attention. Every specific person has to exercise their own faith. Every single one of them. When they went to the house, they were all huddled in there. Who is the all that we keep saying? The all, the all, the all. Who are the all? The father, the mother, the brethren, the Rahab, the kindred. In other words, the relatives. Very specific. Each one of them could make the choice to run out. Each one of them could make the choice to take the opportunity to sin, disobey, disregard, don't trust God. But each one of them was specifically called out to say each individual exercise their own faith. COVID-19 is a time where we have to exercise our own faith. People can run, people can sin, even Christians. What is your faith at this time, elderlies? Sometimes I hear of some in other countries. I don't hear of us, maybe there are. Some elderly Christians, they become very superstitious. They send out texts, superstitious texts. Instead of trusting in God, they trust in superstitious practices. They say, put this at the door. It will ward away this thing. Put that superstitious actions. Are you superstitious at this time? Is that temptation very high? You live alone. Students, I've given examples. It's your own faith now. You're huddled up there. It's your own faith. What would you do in that situation? Working it out, the same. You're working at home. How would you work? Would you, at this time, play politics? I better make sure I am recognized. I better make sure I will be able to maintain my job. So I will play politics. People can play politics even though it is through virtual working. I will sabotage my colleagues. I will take credit for things. Will you do that? Will you succumb in order to maintain my job, my salary? I will not live righteously. No, you must exercise your own faith. Mothers, you must exercise your own faith. How are you going to take care of your children at this time? What are you going to trust? Are you going to say, husband, our mortgage. Husband, our lifestyle. Husband, our children's education. Husband, why don't you take this job? Oh, I know it's sinful, but at this time, it's an exception. Just do fly in, fly out, husband. It's okay. After all, it's online, right? You can do it from there. Are you tempted to ask your husband to sin? Are you fearful? You see, fear would drive us to do all these things. Fear is because we don't remember. We worship the living God that is precise, in absolute control, that is particular in watching over you in ways that you don't even realize. Things look fearful, doesn't it? You look at your bank account. It's crumbling. It's falling week by week. It's just outgoing, lots of outgoing, not enough incoming. It's falling. Like the house that they're in, everything around them crumbling. Maybe you look at your health. It's deteriorating. It's also falling. Maybe you look at your results. Well, with all this online learning, it's falling. You look at jobs around us. Number of jobs available, falling, crumbling. Look at lives around us. Many are dying, literally falling prey to COVID-19. Lots of things around us are crumbling. How would you respond? Rahab's situation, they just stayed put, obeyed absolutely. Don't run out and do what you think looks the most logical thing to do. Even though it's sin, I'll just do it. Now, my Christian friends, you only need to fear God, and you have nothing else to fear. Fear is a natural, common response of men, not a good response when it comes to fearing situations, fearing men, fearing losses. But that is how we are. You need to, like Rahab, only fear God. That is all. When you only fear God, you fear no COVID-19. You fear no falling rates of job. You fear no falling rates of people dying, falling of people dying. You fear no falling bank account around you. Now, Christian, if you live for God, you have nothing to fear. Faith and fear of God is the only thing that will keep you in the house. In the house literally means, not literally means like COVID-19, we all huddle up in the house and stay in the house. It is to stay where you are, do what you're supposed to do. Now, what is the last thing that we should learn from this situation? We look further down. We've covered 22 and most of 23. Now, look at the end of verse 23. And they brought out all her kindred and left them without, in other words, outside the camp of Israel. They left them outside of the camp of Israel. So they brought the whole family out, brought them and put them outside where the Israelites camp. Why? Is it because they were not hospitable people, so leave them outside? Well, prostitute and family, leave them outside. No, not at all. How do we know? Because after that it says in verse 25, and Joshua saved Rahab the harlot alive. You see, reminder again, the harlot. Alive, and her father's house and household and all that she had, reminder of all again. And she dwelt in Israel even unto this day. When this book was written, Rahab still alive. Where was she living? Outside the camp? No. She lived with the children of Israel. Why was there a time where they were put outside the camp? Because it is a time where they were told in the book of Leviticus, for example, Deuteronomy, they were told, these proselytes, those that want to believe, they will be kept aside for a period. They will go through certain things to help them understand, help them to remove their old ways. If not, you bring them in, they'll bring their ways into the camp. To teach them the ways of the living God, to teach them, help them understand, change. So they will change their clothing, they will change many things. Things that maybe they may be wearing certain things that represent their gods. All these things will change. They were given a time to be taught to change. And then they will be brought in to live with the children of Israel, to become God's people, living with God's people. So that is what they went through. Now, their faith paid off. That is the point. Their faith paid off. They survived. Now, but what do we want to learn, that we need to learn about this? Well, we have to remember not to want to simply be delivered physically. That's all. In COVID-19, or in life's problem after COVID-19, things may become equally difficult for you and your family, for you as an individual. It may become more difficult. Now, after that, what will you be like? Rahab was not just wanting to be delivered physically. How do we know that? If Rahab simply wanted, oh please, I want this God, simply because she wanted not to be killed, and she wanted her family not to be killed, what would she do when the walls were crumbling? All I want is to escape, right? Physically, now is the time to escape. Why did she stay in the house? In fact, why did each individual stay in the house? Grandpa could have run out. Parents could have run out. Young ones could have run out. Why did they not run out? And when they are brought out to this camp, outside the camp, it's their own volition, their own willingness to stay there. They could run away. They could escape the children of Israel. But the reminder here is, and she dwells in Israel. She continued to dwell there. She did not run away from the camp outside, and she lived among them. She changed her way. She was among them. In fact, she would be listed among the ancestors of Jesus Christ, the Savior, the resurrected Savior of the world. She wanted to be part of God's people, not because she wanted to run away, wanted to be spared of physical problems. If that is what she wanted, and that is all, she could have run away many times. Wanting to be part of God's people means she wants to take this God as her God, worship Him, be part of His people, serve Him, love Him, receive this God as her God and denounce all other gods. That is why she did not run away. So my friends, wanting to be delivered from COVID-19, wanting to be safe, is not just to be safe physically. If that is your thought, you are going to forget all the lessons that you've learned in COVID-19, because in everything that you do during COVID-19, at work, at home, with your children, as an individual, you did it all because you say, God, please don't let me get COVID. Please don't let me get COVID. Please don't let me get COVID. All right? Elderly is the same. That's all you want. You missed the point. The deliverance, the physical deliverance of Rahab, and what she did reflected that she, after being delivered, all she wanted was to be genuinely worshiping and serving this God. No change. My great concern of my heart, my prayer, is that none of BPCWA worshippers backslide during COVID. And in COVID, when we respond rightly, not because we want to be delivered from physical harm, we want to be delivered from losing our job, but because that is us. That's all. That's my faith. That is my love for my God. That is why I obey Him. That is why I do what I do. Not just to be delivered physically. So that when after that, my prayer is that when you come out, you will be the same. No, you will be stronger. Because you have learned all the lessons of faith. You've experienced, you have had to live out that faith in a much more difficult environment and not fail by His grace. Because of that experience, you become stronger. That is my great prayer all the time, my great desire. And my great fear is that if that is all you want, to be delivered physically, you will just be looking forward to when this is over, I am going back to all my old ways. Oh, my friends, many are tuning in to Christian live streaming. Maybe you're one of them. Maybe in the past you've always not want to go to church, you avoided church. You call yourself a Christian, so to speak. But now suddenly you're interested. Why? Search your hearts. Is it really because, like Rahab, this is the true and living God? I've learned that now. And in all this crumbling, He has used this to draw me to Him. Otherwise, I would not think about him. I thank him for this. It's designed, although it's crumbling all around me, but it's designed to draw me by his mercy. Because of all this, Rahab and family turn to him, turn to God. Or are you just tuning in, listening, now being very interested because you are fearful of things around you, not fearful of the living God, fearful of the crumbling things around you. That is all. Then when COVID-19 isolation and problems are over, you will not come to church. You will not be part of God's people. You would not worship him. You would not serve him. You would just say, great, this is all over. I just won't bother again. That is not the design of why God wanted everything to collapse around Rahab and family. It drove them to genuine faith and trust in the living God. So you may call yourself a Christian, you may have been going to church, ask yourself, really, why are you changed now? Be honest. Likewise for the believer. Rahab never returned to her idolatries. Here it says she dwelled with Israel. She worshipped the God. She never went back to her old ways. She became an honorable, godly woman. Another thing that, in closing, I want to say, well, actually there are many other things. One is COVID-19 or when everything is crumbling around you. Christian, learn this. Not only stay put and live your faith out, but be an encouragement to others. The family is named, all the generations and relatives, her kindred, huddled out in the same room. When things are crumbling, you think there may not be a single one that is fearful? It's crumbling. Shall we run out? You think there's not a single one that may not succumb to the temptation? Let's just take this chance, all right? Why stay in here? It doesn't make sense. There could be all this, but the huddling up, I always imagine, the door burst open. The two spies went in, and they were all just hanging onto each other, some smiling, some fearful, some joyful, but clinging on to one another and just staring at the two spies that broke in. Are they going to kill us or are they going to deliver us? But all this while, they kept each other encouraged. None ran out. You see, if Rahab ran out, I think others will follow. Someone panics, others will also be tempted to panic and succumb to do that which is not what God intends. They were all huddled in there, every single one of them. It's a great time to encourage one another. You may know another one that is succumbing, that is fearful. If you, by your testimony, live out, why do I share those testimonies? Is it to share to praise men? I don't mention their names. I share it to let you know, to encourage your faith. They live like that, not to tell me to tell people. They wanted to tell me that this is the lesson that God taught them. And they're so thankful for COVID-19 because otherwise they would not have learned this lesson. All this encourages us. Every single one of them stayed there. Every single one of them did not go out. Individual faith. Last but not least, respond to the gospel, my friends. Rahab went around preaching to her parents, to siblings, to relatives. They came to trust in the Lord. Maybe your children are preaching to you. They keep sharing the gospel to you for a long time. Maybe your relatives, God sent your relatives to keep sharing the gospel. Your friends, you keep hearing it. Respond. These people responded. Genuine response. They got saved. It also tells us, Christian, it is a time to bear testimony. It is a time when all else is crumbling around us. It is a time not to keep worrying about yourself. It is a time to share the gospel. Rahab was not only worried about her own life. She knew that this is the living God means hell is real and only this God can save. She was not just wanting her relatives not to die physically. She really knew the gospel is true. It's a time for us to invite, plead with friends and relatives, not just keep worrying about your own physical survival. Each person must exercise our own faith. My last statement is this. Rahab genuinely wanted to be delivered because she wanted to be part of God's people. No change in her life after COVID-19. For us, that must be the case when we return. Not just waiting for this to be over, go back to our old ways. Now, if that is your heart, my dear Christian friend, you genuinely obey now because you want to grow in your faith. You want to obey. You want to live your life on a higher plane, more Christ-like. If that is your genuine desire, you want to serve God, you want to live for Him, then Scripture says this to you. As long as the Christian fear God, there's nothing else he need to fear. We've seen that. Don't succumb. And as long as you at this time live and thereafter live like Rahab for Christ, then your living, your protection, your provision, every single of your need that you're facing now, when all else is crumbling, do you realize it's not your problem? If you live for Christ and intend to live for Him after COVID-19, your livelihood is God's concern. He will be the one that provides because you want to live for Him. It will be His concern. You can see your bank account crumbling. You can see your job crumbling. You can see lives crumbling. You can see everything crumbling. But to provide in that crumbling situation, God says, it is my responsibility. And I am a precise and particular God in keeping, providing, and protecting you and every single one of your family member because you always lived for me. Then your life is my concern. But if you live for yourself, as soon as it's over, I'm going free. I think you should worry about whether God will take care of you. These people stayed in the house because they wanted to live for God. Genuine. In the midst of the changing scenes of life, everything is changing very rapidly. The scenes of life have changed and may never be the same again. But in the changing scenes of life, in the last verse of the hymn we are about to sing, He reminds us we only need to fear God and live for Him. Let us rise to sing our closing hymn, 35, 3-5, hymn number 35, 3-5.